Hello, everyone. It's Zara Altair with Actation Now, and this is the Midweek Zap. And our guest today is Dr. Manuel Saint-Victor. I'm just thrilled. And we're going to be talking about your naked unconscious.
Yep.
So thank you, Zapsters, for joining us. Manny, tell us a little bit about yourself for people who don't know who you are.
I think of myself as a reinvigorated physician. There you go. I took the traditional route of medical training. I went to Harvard undergrad. I did a psychiatry residency before I jumped out into the world of, to building virtual worlds. And during the course of learning 3D programming, I got caught up in the numbers and fell in love with the ideas of psychometrics, about how, and this is particularly relevant today, how by creating things in virtual worlds that are in people's unconscious minds, you can bring it to the forefront of their awareness. And from there, they become more aware of them in the real world. So that led me into marketing and studying different psychometrics, personality, and stuff along those lines.
Okay, so when we were talking quite a while back now about our topics for today, you had suggested the unconscious and the naked unconscious, but also you had mentioned the sublime unconscious. So why did that come to your mind, the sublime unconscious?
Well, there's so much good stuff in there. I'm a strong believer that your best elements have yet to be discovered, because the intensity of the energy in your unconscious mind is so much more, is overwhelming. So you put on your attention, you put on your blinders, you limit your awareness so that you can take a sip basically from a fire hydrant and take in the amount of information that you can tolerate, information that you think is palpable or palatable.
Palpable and palatable. I like that mix.
Yeah, sounds like there we go in the naked unconscious again.
Yeah. And then so there's that unconscious, and it's right beneath the surface. So how do we tune into our unconscious? What are some things that we can do to, especially, here we are in business, most of us who are here, and we want to be paying attention and we want to be healthy individuals, and our unconscious can, drive us way over in some crazy track that isn't on track. How do we go right beneath the surface to find and listen to our unconscious?
Well, it's like we were discussing earlier, it's breathing and noticing. So one of the most important things you can do, and one of the most powerful things you can do, is to take the time to breathe and be aware of your breathing. The reason for that is your breathing changes the whole pH of your body, and it affects how your brain channels between, there's two channels of your memory, and one of them is the thematic, the overall, the part that's connected to the present. So by breathing, you connect back to that, and then you notice. You create a habit of noticing what's going on around you and mindfully picking the elements that you want to bring your attention to, instead of living by your habits and constraining to what you've always noticed in the past and expecting more of it in the future.
Okay, so here I am, and I want to notice. So I'm, more tuned in. What are some clues that I can? What are the clues the unconscious is giving me that I'm probably ignoring?
Well, what are you curious about? It's usually, curiosity is usually a signal from the unconscious. If you want to use Jungian archetypes, you'll often hear people talk about like the trickster. The trickster being, I'm in the middle of doing what I'm supposed to be doing, the thing that's the task that's assigned, and a rabbit hops off and goes down a rabbit hole, or a squirrel goes by. It's being able to notice the item and not overreact not numb yourself to it and not do the stereotyped expected reaction to it. So if you're part of a herd, part of a tribe, and a new stimulus approaches, you want to be able to, A, not overreact and be like, oh, the world is melting. B, and at the other extreme, you want to not ignore it. And at the third level, you want to not have the stereotyped response you've had to it in the past, because if you're at a different stage developmentally, it's time to reevaluate that stimulus and see if it has a new meaning to you in the new context.
And then we have a comment from Midweek, and he says, the conscious mind is very often hampered by logic, which does not help in creation. What do you think of that, Manuel Saint-Victor?
Yeah, he's dead on. Dead on. The way you help with that is, again, the breathing. And the mechanism they most often recommend is cognitive reappraisal. You come to your first conclusion. Your logic comes clamping down. You know, it's a saber-toothed tiger, run. So we don't have that many saber-toothed tigers running around. So take a minute to breathe. And if it's not that, and you don't react accordingly, like as if it were that, what else could it possibly be? And that's when you, in a situation of short-term evaluation, you can stop a script you're already running, the autopilot you're already running, and say, oh, I'm sorry, I overreacted. I apologize. I take back what I said. You know, don't plow through just for the sake of consistency. Now, if you've missed that window of opportunity, the next thing you can do is later on, days later, when you see the outcome, the consequences of that negative choice, you can use regret. Regret is one of the best tools we have for reprogramming our memories. So you're like, okay, I regret this. What are some things that I did that I think were early enough that I had control over that could have prevented that from that outcome? Was it the place that I went to? Was it the way I spoke to the person? Was it lack of planning? Just, you learn from the experience that way. So you dig into your unconscious mind when you're not in the heat of battle, and you set intentions for next opportunities to act.
And that goes back to noticing, which I think is going to be our theme for today, is noticing, because if you're not noticing, it's all going to flow right past you.
Yep.
And the thing that happens is that if you make those, those logical choices, you know, in a stream, they compound. And that's the way people can paint themselves into corners, as it were. You know, there's like, it seems as though there is no way out because you made this decision based on that previous decision, and then it's a tough untangle.
Yep, there's two elements to that I've seen mentioned. There's chunking, which is where you put unconscious elements together and you have a thought, which is this linking two things and kind of burping up an emotion. It's an automatic thought that pops up. So that's the chunking aspect. The other aspect is functional fixedness, where once something is chunked, you get better and better at noticing the chunks, and you've rewarded yourself. You know, you pat yourself on the back, society rewards you. You have chunk upon chunk upon chunk, and you have these structures, and then you come up against sunk cost, where you don't want to undo this one, or that one, or that one, and you're never going to unthink your fundamental stuff. I think Imani agrees. You hear? Is she okay, Em? Yes. Okay, they're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have these clues. Let's talk some more about the clues, because I think this is where people, you know, so you're practicing noticing, but what are the clues, Manny, that we really need to notice? Because if you say noticing, that could be anything.
Yeah, there's two approaches that are effective for noticing. The first is, hold on, Em, bring her and the pacifier, please. One is noticing general structures of habit and putting a label on it. Once you put a label on it, it becomes less uncertain, and you pull it into conscious representation so you can manipulate it. And in terms of interacting with people, what you do is you can put labels from the drama triangle. You can put victim, hero, or persecutor. Victim, hero, or villain, if you want to use 3 V's. Pacifier, you got it? Imani says hello. So when you say to yourself, okay, if you're playing the victim role, you may go into passive aggressive, you may disempower yourself, you may shame yourself, and you retreat to the corner, and then you go into that scripted behavior. By saying to yourself, okay, I'm playing a victim role, then you're aware of it. And your brain, anytime you can reduce uncertainty in your unconscious mind, you bring that idea closer to consciousness, because consciousness is about the labels. So by realizing when you're doing those things, it's less uncertain, and you're able to breathe. You can walk, you can shift positions, and it's called drifting. You drift into your drama positions, which are unconscious scripts that you've learned through habit.
One of the things I think is important and is really basic when you're just starting to practice this and you're practicing noticing, I think for a lot of people, when they're busy and their concept is that they're focused, okay? They're focused on their business and they don't have time for emotions or feeling, because this is all, we're going to go back to Wake's, logic stuff. And I think that one of the ways that can help get in touch with all of that is to notice your emotion. So are you happy? Are you sad? Are you angry? Are you disappointed? I mean, these are real basic things. But if you've locked yourself away, those emotions get kind of smooshed down and they're sort of in this general clump emotion, I'm not going to deal with it now. Yeah. But, to notice and go, what that person said really disappointed me. I thought they'd come up with something else and that was really disappointing. Or, I was really angry. So it's a basic recognition of the emotion, how you are responding to what is happening, what somebody is saying, or what somebody is doing, or what the situation is around you. The first step, I think, is what is the emotion? What is my emotional response to this? Because it helps us. I liked your part about labels. If you've lost touch with or put aside your feelings, if it's when you bring them back up, you need to label them, because people sometimes are very confused. They're like feeling something, but they don't know what it is. And so because they don't know what it is, they have a knee-jerk response, or they don't know how to react at all. And then they're frozen.
Yeah, the uncertainty is one of the worst feelings that people can have, because then there's a part of the population that, and this is again labeling, you would label them as neurotic. And neurotic means, when you look at it scientifically, it's a trait that predicts the worst possible outcome in any given situation. And if someone is neurotic enough, they would rather lock things down to relieve the uncertainty. And there's a pessimism that goes with it. So they'd rather take the bad now and know it's coming, versus that uncertain, even worse abstract that they imagine.
Whoa, accept the bad now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And a lot of times that means when you have someone who's just worried about this nebulous thing, and you're like, well, what's the worst that could happen? And then they'll tell you the worst. And by having them articulate the worst that could happen, and then you tell them, you help them make it even worse. You're like, and what if everything exploded? And then there's a fire. And then your husband leaves you. And then on the way to the funeral, on the way to the divorce, you have a wreck and the kids die. And they're like, oh, that feels awful. And you're like, okay, statistically, what are the chances of all that happening? And they're like, yeah. And yet that awful still feels less bad than the uncertain, abstract awful. So by helping someone nail down what they feel bad about, And there's Neil Fjord, who has the now habit. He has the concept of the work of worrying. It's like, what are you worried about? Okay, make it clear. Okay, now what are the things that we can do if we think with a reverse calendar to prepare ourselves for the signs of the worst possible outcome? That way you let more of your conscious mind free and you delegate to your unconscious mind implementation intentions, which are intentions to act when an opportunity emerges, and distraction intentions, intentions to make certain things that would be temptations less salient on the way to your goal.
I'm processing because it's that's it. I mean, you know, then those emotions, when you know what they are and you know, it gives you better control. Here you go, control freaks. It gives you better control over your decision-making process. That you know, if you just by habit react to something in a way that you haven't, that you've always done it this way, and you're not thinking about what your reaction is. I like to distinguish between respond and react. So if you take that moment of, you know, even as simple as breathing, in order to look at what's going on and respond, and it's only a matter of seconds. It's not like, you know, this big blank pause for 3 minutes, you know. It's a matter of seconds of processing information inside and doing some breathing, that then you can respond rather than, and be in control, as it were, rather than just react from a pure, you know, emotional, you know, real basic stuff sometimes, you know. That is how people get into physical fights.
Yeah, and that's what they label as like the power of your imagination. Is a lot of people are so overwhelmed by their thoughts, and that comes from not separating your thoughts from reality. And like the technical term is psychic equivalence, where you don't even want to think about certain things because you have this magical thinking that you're going to think it into being or talk it into being. But the downside of that is that until you're able to think through the worst possible thing and realize how you feel about it and label it, you're not able to think through what the signs are that that worst possible thing is on the way. And on the other side, you have people who don't want to think towards the best possible thing because they're going to jinx themselves, which is, it's like, oh, you know, no, you're going to plan.
Okay.
You know, so Dennett calls it failure of imagination. So you give someone permission to think of the wildest, craziest, most pleasant thing they can imagine, and then you don't stick there because that's called doting. Doting is when you think about your goal, and you don't think about anything other than just the goal. You don't think about your intentions to get there. And the difference between intentions and goals are that a goal just has, it's a goal state, but an intention has not just the goal, but the steps, kind of the brick road to the goal. But most people, they don't do the mental contrasting, which is what you think about the goal, the beautiful thing that you want. Then you think about where you are now. And in your unconscious mind, that's called mental contrasting, when you look at the future goal in the present, and it connects the two thoughts in your mind, in your unconscious mind, so that they're activated together in the future. And as you step back in time, it gives you an idea of whether it's a realistic goal or not, or whether like to stop expecting magical thinking. And that all takes place in our unconscious mind. When you do that consciously and then you let it go, after you set the implementation and distraction intentions, you delegate your memories to the environment, because intentions are activated a lot more quickly by signs in the environment than other thoughts.
Oh, I just thank you so much for that, because I think a lot of well-intentioned self-help theories, you know, have to do with, you know, the glibly talk about goals not very often talk about intention. That's quite infrequent. And think about positive thoughts. But there actually is a process and a progression that happens. I want to bring up some comments because we're getting some really great feedback here. So Peter Haverly says, isolating emotional responses opens a portal to solving it, especially if you expand the semantic around it.
Booyah. Sorry, I'm good now. Yeah, Peter nailed it, and Peter knows a good bit about the unconscious. So.
Yeah, he does, and he has one other comment he made a little bit earlier is, language patterns are a great example of hidden links and subconscious meaning.
Exactly. Yeah, because and Peter will tell you, because he's got the conceptual engine, which is nothing more than your unconscious that you can dig through. That's why I love playing around in there.
I know
it's a map space. What we have to keep in mind is that there was a time before the computer where all these ideas that you see on these different tabs, all your Facebook threads of friends saying, I want pizza, all these things were thought and then evaporated. Now they're thought and they hang out in the collective unconscious. And the collective unconscious is nothing more than what's lingering around you in your social information and meaning network, in your linguistic network, in your linguistic community. But it's there and it has a different likelihood of popping up. If someone is always talking about strawberry ice cream on Fridays and you're looking at that person's wall on Friday, there's a pretty good chance that part of your conscious thought is going to involve strawberry ice cream that Friday. It's a math machine, and your brain starts to predict. You might be like, oh, he's going to talk about ice cream again. Well, now it's in your conscious mind regardless. You've activated it yourself just based off the predictive mechanism. And the language patterns allow us to hold the representation. Craig, my partner over at Mindful 360, one of the first jokes he made when we met years ago was, there's a big difference between being touched by an angel and being felt by an angel. And I was like, who says that? But Craig does. As Peter brought up with the semantics, part of the semantic, there's a semantic gradient, and one of the elements is the valence of it, the valence of a word. And the word has sort of a charge. It could be like an evaluative charge. Hold on, Armani just took my earbuds. So it has an evaluative charge, and it could be, you can evaluate it as pleasant or unpleasant based on whether it triggers an approach or an avoid response in the person experiencing it. And so you can navigate space like that. If you put a different word on something, a person will not approach it just by you labeling it as something pejorative. And you can hide good things behind emotionally loaded words.
Oh, people do that. Yep. And then Glenn Jewett had something just physiology. It takes an 11th of a second for the signal to go from the octave nerve to the brain. Thus, all now is actually a memory we create and interpret. We're responsible for our reality. Thanks.
I love that.
I like it too. Thank you very much, Glenn. And then Lee Rickler. Hi, Lee.
Hey, Lee.
We are at the place that we are because of everything in our past. At this point of now, where we are is exactly where we belong.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And my mom used to say that if you're stuck somewhere, take the time to notice where you are more clearly before you do the same thing you've been doing. You're like, oh, this always happens to me. Well, what is it that you do that makes it that this always happens to you? Change one of those things so that this doesn't always happen to you.
Exactly. And, you know, much earlier, let's take a break here. Much earlier, Wake asked if you could you explain a bit more about breathing and the effects it has on the body? Okay,
sure. Your emotions are connected to a factor called high frequency heart rate variation. And you can find some easier articles on it by HRV, heart rate variability. Sorry. Now, your heart rate variability is connected to RSA, respiratory sympathetic arrhythmia, or something like that. Sometimes I let the words go and just hold the letters because it's easier to think. But when you are doing your breathing, your deep breathing, it changes a lot of things. On the first level, if during your breathing, you're paying attention to the breathing, you're switching lanes in your working memory. Your working memory and your attention make up your consciousness. So there's two forms of working memory. There's propositional working memory, which is a later one that evolved where you're using words to represent your reality. And you can use words and concepts, and you could be worried, fixated on a word. You could not notice something in your real reality. Now, the other one is what they call implicational working memory. And that's, I like to think of it as mythos. It's themes, it's metaphors. They say that the way to prevent suffering is by spending more time in that older pre-word memory. That's the working memory that's aware of the present, of your body. It's connected to your insula in your brain. Therefore, it's connected to something called interoception. It's the integrated signal of all the elements in your body, all the chemistry, all the pressure, all the energy. And so a lot of people consider it the integrated signal from your unconscious mind. So that's one way. The second element is that breathing.
I think preventing suffering is really a wonderful concept.
Yeah, it is. Now, the second element is that when you do the breathing as your mechanism of meditation, the end result is that you get your heart and your brain are aligned like in a coherent wave, which is a sign of the two parts, the two systems working in harmony. So the breathing, just being still, it resets the heart-brain system. The importance of that is that you can go into fight or flight and your whole body gets covered in a bath of cortisol. It doesn't matter if you're eating healthy or whatever, because your body's in fight or flight. It's like panicking. What? No, not in your mouth. So breathing takes you out of that. And to me, I think that when smoking came around, one of the parts of the smoking ritual that made it so potent was, okay, you're getting this, but a large part of what you're doing is changing the pH in your body. Third element is I was emergency medicine before I went psychiatry, and one of the techniques we used to use was deep breathing and then hyperventilation, so as to decrease intracerebral pressure. Okay, so breathing is like so super important. It's so fundamental to keeping connected.
Oh wow, that was really fantastic. Like breathing is like, when you were talking about it, I was thinking of like pressing the reset button. It's like that simple. Breathe, reset.
Yep. Now, one third study, and I haven't dug deeply enough into it to like fully speak on it, is that they found that one of the most powerful meditations is alternate nostril breathing. And they explain the technique, if you Google it, where you use your thumb to hold one nostril and take your middle finger, and you go back and forth and you do an inhale and exhale in each nostril. Now, what makes that super powerful is that because you're doing sort of a higher complexity, immersive experience with your breathing, you stay in the moment and you're focused on your breathing. And they found that decreases blood pressure. It does like amazing stuff without pills.
She's so wonderful. Okay, I'm going to bring up a couple more comments.
Okay.
This one is again from Midweek, who says, I guess this happened the last 3 shows. Comment tracker goes lame. So Midweek says, when we torture ourselves with thoughts about negative results, we are training ourselves for a job in hell.
Definitely.
Yeah, there's like, it's dwelling on the negative possibilities. It's not a good place to go. Thanks, Midweek. And then Becky Coleman, let's see. Nope, I can't bring it up. Becky Coleman says, intention opens the unconscious. intention allows release of past thought. Does intention equal action steps toward goal? So that's a question.
Implementation intentions are the specific memory construct that are the action steps to the goal. There's also distraction intentions, which are the steps that you want to avoid. And what that does is it decreases the salience of that stimulus when you're in that goal pursuit mode. And the third one is goal intentions. And all they contain is the goal state and how it's going to feel and stuff like that.
Okay, that was, thank you very much, Becky. That was a great question. And Christine Albowen says, oh, I keep pressing this and nothing happens. Says, there's my word, reset. So yeah, I think it's an easy way, just speaking of labels, Manny, I think it's a great way to just, instantly reset, time to breathe.
I love that.
Yeah. Thanks, Christine.
CLB. Sorry, I'm good.
Everybody's breathing, yeah. So, yeah, I know we had, let's go back to being still inside, which I think is one of the key. Breathing helps us get there. And then once we're there, to being still inside, how can we remain still inside long enough to sort through all that stuff that feels like it's bombarding?
Habit. If one of the techniques connected with breathing is they call it diffusion, spelled D-E-F-U-S-I-O-N. So you start visiting thoughts that are uncomfortable from a safe place, and you do this. You don't dive right into like the thought that takes you full spasmic. That's suboptimal. You approach memories that you might be uncomfortable with, and you experience them from a place of power, knowing that you're safe now, and that dilutes some of the usual initial trigger emotion, and then you reauthor it with a sense of control of it. You say you were trapped in a crate by your parents for X number of years, and you've managed to survive it, and now you have a crate thing. By thinking back to maybe the room where you were trapped, and realizing, and forgiving yourself for whatever it is that you encoded in your memory that you did that made your parents feel that it was okay to put a child in a crate. It's a chance to reauthor those elements from an authority point of view, with author permission and from a safe place. Giving yourself freedom to imagine things and not instantly judging yourself is powerful also. Because we're raised in a culture where a lot of times it's like thought police, basically, where you think something, you're like, oh, I'm an awful person that I would think this. You think 60,000 thoughts a day. It's just two ideas bouncing into each other, and they make it across your lineman, and you can just let it go back subliminal, let it go. And one of the techniques that I've found to be particularly useful is what they call the white room technique. You imagine you're sitting in a perfectly white room, and there's one door on one end, there's another door at another end. Now, as a thought comes to mind, you imagine the thought as like a bubble in the room, okay? And you just imagine breezes making the thought go to the other door, okay? Now, the thought will have whatever valence a thought has. It'll be uncomfortable still. You're like, I hate thinking about that. But you're in this white room, and you just imagine like even if some people do their breathing and they're like, each time you breathe, you imagine that you're blowing the thought away, and you have the thought kind of float out the other door, your exit door. Then you close the door behind it, and then you wait for your next thought. The next thought bubbles in, you let it into the room. And the power of visualization and imagination it's boundless. It's what, if you learn to use it incrementally, and you learn to choose which thoughts you want to don't repress and suppress them, let them in, deconstruct them, rip them apart, take away their power. The most negative thought that you have, if you can't get it out of your head, trap it in your head and repeat it 50 times out loud, like, and it loses power. It loses power. It loses that visceral ability to startle you. B, the thought is, and I like to imagine it, the thought is so surprised that you're not repressing it, that all of a sudden the thought is in the white room like, I'm not freaking him out. Oh man. And it does something to you. It's empowering to trap your most intimidating thoughts. Pacifier recovery. It's empowering to trap your most intimidating thoughts in your white room and say, it's me and you. And I'm sitting right here. I'm not kicking you out of my mind, and nothing is happening to me. Yeah. And then eventually when you're done with it, you separated the thought from the meaning, because you keep saying whatever the thought is. You just look at it, you're like, we're in the room, I'm fine. And then eventually the habituation response kicks in, your sympathetic system turns down, and you're like, you can leave now. And then you blow the thought out of the room.
Oh, that is a beautiful, beautiful visualization. Getting some more feedback here. Luc Chalois. Bonjour, Luc. Oh, comment tracker still not working. So, amazing discussion. Breathing, the most fundamental act we do automatically. Automatic actions are good. They help deal with mundane stuff. But being aware of automatic action enables to change them and improve. Oh, that's so true, Luke. Yes, with being aware. Okay, I think if we get anything out of this whole conversation today, it's about being aware. And then Peter Haley, actually in conversation with Rueck, says, decisiveness brings certainty. And I think that's one of the things I really loved about that white room visualization, that horrible thing, that concept, that thought that is really trying to overpower you, if you just let it pass through. I kept saying, while you were doing that, Manny, I kept thinking, just go closer to the door, and that is just a super visualization. So I want to thank everybody. We're kind of running to the end of our time here. And Manny, you have an announcement of something that is happening just today. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I accepted the Chief Medical Officer position at Concordis Healthcare. So I'm going to be joining that startup as their Chief Medical Officer.
So that's so exciting. And there you go. You're leaping into startup mode. And that is really exciting, and congratulations. So just tell us briefly, Concordis, what does it do?
It combines all of your healthcare into one app. Your physicians can log on to their EMRs, and all that data will be in the app. Pharmaceutical companies will manage your prescriptions and stuff. You'll be able to, the vision is that you'll be able to have your health narrative within that one environment. I'd say we're 75% there. We have the farm management. We have the EMR integration. We have some of the major players have decided to jump in the pool with us. So I guess my vision is empowering people to come into contact with their illness without being overwhelmed, and when they feel like it, without the context of being in this sort of disempowering antiseptic environment of a hospital, but within your personal narrative. So you can get all your stuff in one place, and it can be organized in the same way that your Facebook organizes all your friends for you. In my ideal world, all of your health stuff would be organized in one place. You control your medical data. You decide who gets it when, and you just, that's sort of the vision.
Oh, that's a wonderful vision. And I want to congratulate you on diving back into the medical world, but in a different role. And this is a completely re-envisioned role of Manny in the medical world. And so congratulations, because I know you've been away.
I've been off breathing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been waiting to exhale. Yeah, so, yeah, I mean, obviously it's scary. It's scary because 2008 was when I broke ties with the medical thing, and I've been relatively happy away from it. But yeah, I'm a big believer in the hero's journey, and at some point you have to go back. You know, I've been away from the game 7 years, and you know, I love medicine, but I love medicine in a different way than it is now. And I believe that it's anything that I've learned away from medicine, I have a responsibility to use that to help make healthcare delivery going forward better for everyone who can be touched by it. I don't know. I'm delusional like
that. I don't know if it's that much delusional, but it's a really wonderful step, and congratulations on, you know, taking it. Whenever you start a new venture, it really is putting one foot over the edge into chaos. It's that's the way I describe it, you know, and it's like, oh, there's so much unknown, you know. So there's lots of excitement. And it's really time to go, but I want to address this one thing, and I wish I could get Comment Tracker to bring us up. Barbara Quick says, having positive thoughts and not letting negative thoughts come into our mind, the half full glass as opposed to the half empty glass, is what we need in our lives. Manny, you want to respond to that?
I agree with that in a qualified way. One of the most empowering things you can do is negative emotion differentiation. And that's why I like the white room experiment. One of the signs that a patient is getting healthy is when the negative emotion appears, and then they're able to transition to a mixed emotion period, where the same trigger results in, instead of saying, holy crap, doc, I went into catatonic collapse when the spider came into the room, they're like, you know, for a few seconds, I felt awful. Then I froze, and then I felt peace, and then I felt and then I felt, which is a mixed emotion transition. The main concept is something called unitizing. In your brain, neutral stimuli get combined with an emotion, and they become an idea. They float to consciousness. That's how something that's autopilot gets your attention. It flags with an emotion. I'm angry. And then you say, angry about what? And you look around and you connect it to something. Now, reappraisal is grabbing the negative thought, and you know, the thought has both the emotion and the stimulus, grabbing them and saying, okay, now I have you in this white room. It's me, you, I'm feeling the emotion. I don't like the emotion, but I can sit here with you until the emotion fades, and then I can take the power of that stimulus, that trigger, back and let it be a part of my life that triggers a response instead, like you said, of a reaction. So the negative thoughts are to keep us alive, but the hyper response to them, the three maladaptive responses, going ballistic, going habit-based and responding in a way that has been previously maladaptive, or going numb, are the three ways that you go bad with it. I just thought of an example that I've used in the past that's also helpful. There's three ways that you give up power to a negative stimulus. For one, you can pretend the stimulus doesn't exist. So you have a rock in your shoe and you keep walking and it never makes it into awareness. For two, you can, and that's called discounting the stimulus presence. Two, you can discount the intensity of the stimulus. You can be like, yeah, there's a rock in my shoe, but it doesn't bother me that much. And you continue to walk with the rock in your shoe, and you convince yourself that it doesn't bother you that much, but there's still a rock in your shoe. The third one is you can discount your ability to do anything about the stimulus. You can be like, I hate the way this rock feels in my shoe, but there's nothing I can do about it. And then so every day you get up and you let that rock be there. And it's a matter of realizing that these are choices and points of disempowerment, and walking the negative emotion down until you find the trigger that activates the emotion and find some way of changing that representation in your working memory in your mind, so that when that stimulus comes around, your response kicks in instead of the reaction, and you shut down the cause.
Danny, thank you so much. I just couldn't let that one slide away because it's so pertinent to our whole conversation here today. So thank you. And thank you, Zapsters, for all your questions and comments, and we didn't even get to them all. And Manny, you've got help offers from Lee with your new business, and I think we're all excited about that, and congratulations.
Thank you
so much and thank you for this wonderful conversation today. There's lots of things to think about. It's been very, very enlightening. The white room was just mind-blowing. I just love that one. So thank you very much, Manny, and thank you all the Zapsters for being here today and all your comments and questions, and we'll see you next week. Ciao.